welcome to the Antisocial Podcast. My name is Andy Dowling, and sometimes you will see me play bass in the Australian metal band Lord. If you love a bit of old school heavy metal in the vein of Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Queensryche, Halloween, or something new like Symphony X, or hell, if you've never even heard of any of those bands, I implore you to go over to lord.net.au and give some of our music a shot over there. We're also on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, anywhere you find good music, in my biased opinion, you will find us as well. But lord.net.au is the best place to start. Now, in addition to playing in a heavy metal band, I also host the Self-Starter podcast, which is all about small business, self-employment, and freelancing. You can find more information on Self-Starter by going to selfstarter.com.au, or you can search for Self-Starter on your preferred podcast player, maybe what you're listening to this podcast through right now. Now, before I kick into this week's episode, I understand and I admit that my last several weeks, or my 2018 episodes have been a little bit samey. They've been consistent, which is good, but they've been a little bit samey, a little bit on format. This week, I'm mixing it up a little bit because I've got extra information that I need to get out to you all. Some of it is a little bit self-indulgent, I will admit, but some of it may be of interest to you as well. So I think this episode in general is just different altogether, but I'll get to all that in due course. But I've got several web pages open in front of me on my laptop. I've got my notepad open. I've got a whole bunch of stuff here, and I need to tick everything off the list. So bear with me. I will attempt to not stumble through all this, and I'll try to make it as efficient as possible. But there's a lot of good stuff here. So first of all, this is the self-indulgent part of the intro. The other day, I found out that I'm a finalist for Host of the Year for the 2018 Australian Podcast Awards. Blown away. I had no idea that this was even a thing for me, and I'm absolutely stoked and so happy that I am being recognised at this level on a national level for podcasting. Now, this is for the Self-Starter podcast, which initially I thought I didn't quite get it, but because it's only been out for a few months. But I understand that obviously it's a very important topic and something that can impact a lot of people. So I'm really happy with what I've been able to achieve with Self-Starter, but also to get that recognition very early in the piece as well. So thank you so much for the panel of judges that put me into the finalist spot. And the award winners will be announced on May 5th. In Melbourne. If you want to be a part of the Australian Podcast Awards night on the 5th of May in Melbourne, you can go to australianpodcastawards.com. There's information there of how to purchase tickets. There's also a list of all the finalists there as well. I may be there on the night. I originally wasn't because I've got something very important that is on the same day every year, but I'm going to try and give myself a challenge and see if I can tick both things off on the same day. So if I do make it to Melbourne, for any of you out there, let's potentially have a beer together. We'll see how we go. So AustralianPodcastAwards.com, you can go and check all of that out, but thank you very much for the recognition. That is huge. So moving on from the self-indulgent aspect of it, next thing, this podcast and the next several weeks of podcast episodes on the Antisocial Podcast have a sponsor. That's right, I have a sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Design by Jaden. Now, Jaden Fahe is a freelance artist and he's based in Darwin, and he approached me a while ago, and he does a lot of artwork for bands and artists, a lot of people in the music industry. And his artwork's really good. And Jaden approached me, and we've been having chats back and forth, and we've just got something really cool for you guys. So Design by Jaden is the sponsor for the next several weeks. And between now and Sunday, May 6th, I want to give you guys an opportunity to win a free custom t-shirt design or a free album artwork design. Now, if you're not a muso, more than likely, Jaden would be more than happy to work out an alternative design if you've got a business or whatever it might be. But obviously his forte is in music. So definitely that's probably the main focus there. But free artwork up for grabs. So what I'm going to get you guys to do is leave a review for me somewhere. Now, it can be on Facebook, it can be on iTunes, it can be on, I don't know if Stitcher do reviews there. Anywhere you can leave a review on the internet, it doesn't matter. No place is better than anywhere else. I'm not going to discriminate. But if you leave a review somewhere on the internet, please send me a screenshot of that review or a link, and you will go into the running to win free artwork by Jaden. So if you want to go and check out his stuff, you can go to designbyjaden.com, and that's Jaden spelled Jaiden. So designbyjaden.com. So you can get a taste of what his style's all about. Really, really impressive stuff. And if you want to get some free artwork, that's how you get into the mix of potentially winning that prize. But really, really stoked to have a sponsor on the podcast almost 3 years in, and I finally got somebody. How good's that? So designbyjaden.com, go and check it out. Okay, moving along. Now back to the regular format. So as people would know, and each and every week I do a shout out. I do a public thank you to somebody that supports this podcast. Now it can be leaving a review somewhere. It could be shouting me a beer via my paypal.me button on my andysocial.net website. It could be buying a t-shirt or the USB pass from my online store through Bandcamp. It could be anything. It could be a message. It could be referring a friend. It could be just spreading the good news of this podcast. It all fuels my fire and gets me so excited and pumped and motivated, and it means a hell of a lot to me. So each and every week, I believe it's my duty at bare minimum to say thank you to somebody that helps me. So this week's shout out is for Matt Jansen, based in Melbourne. Matt has been listening to the podcast, been commenting on a lot of posts over the past several months, and he's even slung me, is that the right descriptive verb or whatever it is? He has sent over a $10 beer shout via my shout me a beer function on the paypal.me button on my website. So a massive thank you to Matt, who has donated, he's supported, and is always sort of vocal and passing on his positive feedback to me. So it's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much, Matt. Matt, please send me a message with your postal address, and I will find something laying around my house here. I'm looking around. I've got lots of crap here, but I'll send you out something funny or cool, something, I don't know, anything in the post, because we like getting something in the post. So shoot me a message. Give me your address and I will flick something out to you very shortly. But thank you very much, Matt. Greatly appreciated. Okay, folks, this week's episode is with Caitlin Langley. Now, there's no surprises here, guys. You know what this episode is all about. You clicked on the link. But nonetheless, I will attempt to give a little bit of context as to how this episode came to be. So bear with me. I'll try and keep this short and sweet. Now, I've known Caitlin for 10 plus years. Caitlin used to live in Sydney. We've got a lot of mutual friends in the local music scene here in Sydney. And since then, Caitlin has relocated to a town called Wagga Wagga, which for my international listeners, yes, that is a real town. Now, Caitlin is currently the media spokesperson for a community group that is pushing for an exclusion zone and safe access for women that utilize a fertility clinic in a town called Albury, which is about an hour and a half away from Wagga Wagga and is located on the borders of New South Wales and Victoria. Now, fertility clinics, fertility medical intervention, abortion termination, all that kind of stuff, I completely understand. This is an emotionally charged, very sensitive, a very sensitive topic. It can divide people very quickly. So it is a bit of a different one for me. But I'll put it out there and I won't even hesitate. I am absolutely pro-choice. And if you are opposed to that and you are otherwise pro-life, respect. However, I am pro-choice. Now, what Caitlin is pushing for is an exclusion zone, because now to give a bit of context and try and articulate this, and I know Caitlin will do a better job than me, but there's outside of Sydney in the state of New South Wales, there is only one other fertility clinic in New South Wales, which is located in Albury. Now, this fertility clinic only provides the service for intervention for abortion termination on 1 day a week. And this 1 day a week, when women utilize this service, there is a local religious group that protests out the front of this fertility clinic. Now, this religious group is called Helper of God's Precious Infants, which sounds incredibly creepy, but nonetheless, they are out the front and they protest. Now, there is nothing wrong with voicing an opinion, regardless of whatever that might be. However, the way that they are allegedly doing it is of concern. And so what Caitlin is pushing for is a law that allows safe access for women that utilize this service each and every week, and to give a radius of 150 metres around this fertility clinic so that people can safely access it. Now, I'll let Caitlin explain a lot more of this. I stumble all the way through this episode because this is so sensitive of a topic. And for me, being a guy, I always feel like I'm not deserving to be talking about this. But one thing that Caitlin really made a mention of is that yes, this is a woman's issue as far as, a woman's body, but it's also giving an individual the right to make that choice as well. So yes, it is a gender-related topic, but it's also about individual rights as well. So the big takeaway about this is not to remove people's rights about protesting or voicing their opinion, but it's to find balance and to find equal rights for everybody involved with this. It's a very sensitive topic, and I'll let Caitlin explain it. So I'm going to let, I'm stumbling through this. I'm going to let Caitlin explain this, everything we discuss, and there are some things that Caitlin really wants people to get behind and do, especially if you are pro-choice. And I'll put everything over in the show notes over at andysocial.net. There's heaps and heaps of links, and everything that Caitlin talks about will be over in the website, so make sure you go over there. I'll add a little bit more at the end of this episode for you guys to note down as well. But yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. Please enjoy this episode. This is a really, really good episode. I really hope that you guys get something out of it. But please enjoy this episode with Caitlin Langley. I'm struggling. I've been writing down all these notes and reading all these articles that you've been flicking through to me, and I'm trying to work out where the hell to start with this, because it could go deep really quickly.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing, and maybe this is a great way to kick it off, is that recently you were emceeing at a rally in Albury, and do you just want to touch on what the rally was all about and how the hell you got to be emceeing a rally?
Sure. Okay, so I'll start by saying the rally was to bring to attention. There is obviously in New South Wales there is actually it's actually illegal for people to have abortions, and the other problem that we have is that there is one clinic outside of metropolitan Sydney that is available for people to use for terminations. That is outside Sydney and Melbourne. This is the only place where you could go to get a termination. And the problem is that it's picketed every single Thursday, which is when they offer terminations by this group. And this has been going on for years. Mm-hmm. And the group is very militant, and they can be quite aggressive and very confrontational. They take photos of people and they threaten to use them on Facebook for if they come in to get a termination or So I guess the whole point is that the people that were involved in the group that I'm sort of acting as the media spokesperson for, which is We Need Exclusion Zones, right here, right now. What they're basically trying to do is just to get an exclusion zone outside of this clinic so that people that need to access those services, whether it be family planning, counselling, contraception, or a termination, it doesn't really matter what it is, because, to our mind, to my mind, whatever that person is going there to do is nobody's business but themselves and the doctor. And, the thing that I think is crazy is that these people that are, that are picketing outside of this clinic, they don't really know what that person is going in there for. It could be somebody who actually really wants to have a child, but they have, a medical condition, or, maybe the child's heartbeat stopped. And, nobody should have to go through the assumption that, what they're doing is they're murdering a child, or, even just the sake that, you're forcing your own religious ideologies onto someone else. Like we live in a secular society, supposedly. And so, I guess a lot of people, you could say, that people have the right to go on and make decisions based upon their personal beliefs, not, to have someone accost you in the street and tell you, well, this is what I believe, and, you're going to go to hell if you don't follow my belief system. So, yeah.
Well, I think what you said before about, the people that are protesting not understanding what that person's story is, it's also the case that, the person that's going in there shouldn't have to explain themselves to justify the reason as to why they're going in there anyway. So as you mentioned, it's their business and it's a private matter, and it's not for anybody else's information or for them to be privy to.
That's right. Yeah. So I got involved with this group. I live very close to Albury. I live about an hour and a half away in a place called Wagga Wagga. And I actually know some people that live in Albury, and I heard this. I actually heard a podcast about this group, and I was gobsmacked that this kind of stuff is happening in Australia. I had no idea that there were groups like this that were so maybe violent isn't the right word, but really aggressive. And I was just shocked to know that it was happening right outside my doorstep. And I was just like, you hear about it happening in America and, you think, gosh, that's awful. But, when you hear about it happening so close to home, you're like, oh my gosh, I need to do something about this. This is crazy. So that's what got me into it.
So did you know somebody that was already involved in I guess, the group that was trying to, look for exclusion zones or introduce exclusion zones, or was it just something that you heard about, you're so shocked about, you thought, stuff it, I'm gonna dive in there and see what I can do to contribute?
That's pretty much how it happened. I was so moved by I did a bit of reading on it because obviously for me, I'm a scientist and I need proof. I want to know that, I don't just want to go by hearsay. So I did a little bit of research on this group and, I was just shocked to find that, that this has gone uninterrupted for years. This aggressive picketing like you see by, some of those, those really fundamental groups in the States. And I just thought, this is crazy. I can't believe this is happening in Australia. I think, we're pretty lucky in Australia that, people are pretty moderate about their beliefs by comparison to America. And I just thought it was a bit sad that, people's right to, autonomy was kind of getting interrupted by a small minority group of extremists that are basically saying, well, our beliefs should dictate your rights. So that's kind of how I got involved. I mean, I've always sort of been, had very strong beliefs about reproductive advocacy, which is, basically to say that, a woman's right to choose whether or not they want to have a child and that sort of thing, which I know is a contentious topic, but, I just kind of think I've had friends that have gone through, abusive situations where, that it just, to be able to carry through a pregnancy to full term just would not have been the right thing. They've been raped or abused, and you just think, how could you possibly justify trying to make someone in that situation, carry through a pregnancy to full term when, it's obviously not what they want, and it's not going to be something that's going to be a good situation for the mother or the child. It's kind of when the ideology just completely just disregards rationale. Like it becomes somebody's whole world that the letter of the religious law is far more important than common sense. And, there's that, I guess, that God-fearing aspect of it all where, regardless of how, and probably deep down for a lot of, I'm sure, these are more extremist versions of people that practice religious faith. But, it gets to a point where even probably deep down, while they're in a sense of denial, they're probably still thinking that even though there might be some natural instinct where I think that there could be an element of doubt or wrongness that's attached to this, the law of the religious code or whatever this is just overwrites it all, and I have to stay true to whatever the scripture is or whatever the hell their beliefs come from. And it's just like this sort of really blanket.
Yeah, absolutely. It just becomes so they're headstrong, and it's like anybody that just in a. I mean, this is in a less extreme setting, but somebody who's in an argument, and the whole point of the argument is just to win the argument rather than actually trying to find like the right answer. It's like I just don't want to be wrong, and I'm going to keep fighting this
Yeah,
until I win the argument, regardless of the truth behind it all. And
that's right.
yeah, it's this element of
Cognitive dissonance.
yeah, for sure, absolutely. And I read somewhere online. I was reading through some of these articles that I think they did some kind of survey. I don't know where the survey was sourced from, but it was something like 80% of Australians are pro-abortion and understand that women should have the right to make those decisions themselves, and it shouldn't be up to anybody else to make that decision. And 80% is still concerning, because that means there's 20% of the population out there that think otherwise. But I mean, when you're talking about these groups that have been coming every Thursday to this particular clinic, we are talking about the minority, but the minority is obviously quite loud and is causing a lot of negative impact.
Well, I mean, that's the thing to me that's it really blew me away, Andy. I went to 2 of the city council meetings where the local, so in the council they were trying. There was one particular council member, Dr. Amanda Conn, who was trying to get a exclusion zone outside of this clinic through the local council. And that was voted down 9-3 in the council twice.
Wow.
She brought it up in 2 separate council meetings, and I was there. And I honestly, I thought common sense will prevail for sure. I called up the mayor and I said, look, because, I contacted her and I said, what can I do? I really feel passionate about this. This is something that, I really think needs to pass. And she said, just call up the mayor, have a chat to him. And he sounded a little bit, like a little bit touchy, sort of wasn't making any promises. But, oh, yeah, I understand that, women's rights and et cetera, et cetera. And then he voted it down. But, the thing that I found really frightening was that the voices of some of the people that were in the council that were, one of them was a Labor member, and he's actually kind of a member of this group, this religious group. He's been seen outside of the clinic with this group, and the attitude that he had, which was almost, disdainful towards, I mean, obviously he opposes it, which is his right. But, it wasn't just respectfully disagreeing. It was like throwing stones and, getting really, passing some really unnecessary comments and, rolling his eyes and sneering. And I just thought, this is, you're not on a level playing field. And, this arrogant sort of sense of moral superiority that they sort of carry was just really, really disappointing to see. And I mean, obviously that echoes a majority of the community, which is, to my mind, really, it's really frightening. But that's the reason why I've gone out as the media spokesperson to try and, make people outside of this community aware of what's happening, because it's not just Albury that is affected by this issue. It's actually, it's Wagga, it's everywhere that's outside of metropolitan Sydney, in New South Wales, that is affected by this, because, it's the only place where you can get that sort of medical help outside of Sydney or Melbourne, if you can go there. So, yeah,
it's absolutely scary that, for somebody that goes through some form of event that warrants a heavy decision like that, regardless of how many months along or anything like that, putting all that aside, I mean, it's a heavy decision, and it's not just something that you go in there and it's just, it's almost like a routine checkup. I mean, I don't know a great deal about it, and I'm coming from a guy's perspective, but the perspective of it is something that it would be to a level traumatizing, and it's not something that is a pleasant experience anyway. But then to be in an area where there's no options whatsoever, then you have to travel a great distance, and then as you're and whatever challenges that that entails. But then to get to the location and then have this final stumbling block where you've got people that are just pointing fingers at you is just, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what that's like. But just, I mean, the logistics of just understanding where, or not where these places are is just, it's really concerning. And I mean, I had no idea. I mean, I knew that the debate overall on a high level has been there for decades, and I know that we've become a lot more, I guess, progressive, and we've evolved with our views of people's rights and what they're allowed to do. But I didn't realize, and as you said, when you first discovered what was happening, you were shocked. I mean, when you gave me all this information, I was reading through it all. I went, oh my God, this is like, stereotypically the deep south of the US or something like that. Like, I had no idea. And it's just, and actually on that note, because I really have no clue when it comes to, and I'm not sure how much you're able to tell me, but you mentioned at the start about, abortion having, like, it's not legal in New South Wales, or it is in certain circumstances. Do you know what that entails?
So my understanding of technically it's not legal in New South Wales. There's only 2 states that it's legal to have an abortion, and that's, I believe, Victoria and I think the Northern Territory. Mm-hmm. Don't quote me on that, but
sure, yeah.
So basically, whilst you can have a termination in New South Wales, the doctor has to be able to say that you are not mentally sound to carry through a pregnancy. Right. So if you happen to, say, for instance, go to a doctor that had some sort of religious belief that maybe they were not on, they didn't believe that abortion was, something that was good, according to their religious beliefs, they might say, look, I think you're mentally sound, and I think that you should, I think that you should have this pregnancy, which I've never had to be in that situation before, but I just know that here in Wagga, I have personally experienced people pressing their religious ideologies on me just for contraception. And I was really shocked to find myself in a doctor's office where I had a doctor basically berating me for my choice to have, used some on behalf of a specialist that I had previously been referred to, on a checkup that I had gone to this doctor to see, and they were interrogating me about why I'd chosen to do that. And I thought, wow, that's a serious bridge of professional responsibility, I think. And I guess that's why fundamentally for me, I feel it's very difficult when that, if you're in a small town where you've only got access to one doctor, it's very possible that you're not going to have the support that you need to make the decision that's best for you. So that's why it's important not only to be able to legalize, people's rights to make that decision, so that they're not in that position where they have to, feel they're obliged to make a decision based on someone else's belief. But also the exclusion zone in New South Wales would also mean that people can access that service without having to feel intimidation or fear or, being harassed when they're trying to access those services.
Absolutely. And it's so concerning that, people that have invested so many years and money and dedication into like a medical field would allow a religious faith to impede on their medical judgment. It's almost like a slap in the face for all those years that they've invested into their medical career, to have like the hand of God actually override all of that logic and go, nah, sorry, that's in the Bible or whatever I'm referring to, that overrides all my rationale when it comes to my medical training. And I couldn't begin to imagine what it'd be like for for a woman or anybody that would, regardless, I mean, even like, and I won't go down this rabbit hole, but it's like the assisted dying debate at the moment. And
Yeah.
when that's starting to get some traction and there is progress with that, but ultimately you're at the mercy of that doctor and their own beliefs as to whether they feel that you're eligible to progress to whatever that next stage is. And that's terrifying. And as you said, if you're in a small town where there's only really, one or two doctors, you're really at the mercy of what you're limited to there, unless you can get out of town. But it's not that easy.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there is one story of, so we had the Shadow Minister for the Environment and Heritage for Trade and Tourism and Major Events, Penny Sharp, who spoke at the rally that we had in Albury a couple of weeks ago. And she said that she was approached by one woman who actually took a taxi from Wagga. So that's a 1.5 hour taxi ride. Because she was concerned, she didn't want her family to know that she was going for a termination. When she got there, the cab was surrounded by this group of people. They were banging on the windows, and the cab driver was shaken, and the woman was, obviously a little bit traumatized because, I mean, that's what we're dealing with. That's the level of extremism. And, the thing that frustrates me is that, and I'm sure that a lot of people would agree, is that, it's kind of these people are abusing their religious privilege to bully people. And that's, if there's no other situation where people would be allowed to behave in such a manner and not get moved on. For example, like if you had a group of vegetarians who are peacefully protesting outside of a butcher, the police would move them on probably, because that would be, causing a public nuisance. But, the reason that this has been taken to state level, as opposed to going through the council, is obviously it's been voted down by the local members in Albury. So now it has to go to state, because basically it needs to be something that's enforced by the police. You can't have local rangers going in and trying to, arrest people. It needs to be done by the police. It needs to be something that people can enforce. So the problem that we're facing now that it's at state level is that, and this is the thing that's, I mean, I haven't always been a really politically engaged person. It's just that this is an issue that I've discovered, and I'm like, wow, this is like, I didn't know that this was a problem. And that's what's really mobilized me, is that I realized, wow, nobody really knows about this. And, a lot of the members in our state parliament in New South Wales are very conservative. And my concern is that if we don't have people calling up your local members, it's not actually going to pass. And that's why I'm sort of trying to reach out to everyone, because, it was a shock to me and it was a shock to you. But like a lot of people just don't know. People aren't engaged. And I'm very guilty of that. Because I think our generation is kind of a little bit politically disinterested. But, I think if we actually want something like this for people to have that basic liberty to be able to have medical privacy, we actually will need as many people as possible to be calling up their local members and saying, hey, just wanted to make you aware that this is an issue that's important to me. Either call them up or send them an email. I was actually really surprised. They're really good at getting back to you. That's what their job is. So they will actually make time to speak to you. And they need to know if that's something that is important to the people that are living in their area. Because if nobody talks to them, then they're just going to keep on with their conservative views. And it is a majority of sort of more conservative ideologies that are being embraced by a lot of these members. So, I mean, the general consensus at the moment is it's probably not going to be passed. So my challenge now is to go, okay, how can I get people engaged? Like, this is something that I think most people in our generation would be like, oh yeah, of course people shouldn't have to be harassed by, a religious group when they want to go to the doctor, but how long would it take anyone to send an email to their local member and be like, hey, this is something that I care about. Can you please make sure that you do the right thing and you vote for the the amendment, which is what Penny Sharp is doing. So what she's trying to do is get the summary offences amendment to safe access to reproductive health clinics. It's going to come before the New South Wales Parliament this year, and she'll need for the other members in Parliament to be voting to have that amendment to go through. So basically what we're trying to do is to get people to just call up their local members, email them, let them know that it's something that's important and that needs to be changed. Otherwise, there's no reason for them to go with their default position.
It's, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said about people's, I'm trying to think of a better word than ignorance, because I always put ignorance in the bucket of, an intentional ignorance. But I think, when you said the scenario of people having the right to be able to make decisions and not be harassed by the decisions that they make, it's almost like this given. And I think many of us live in areas, around the country, around the world, where we take it for granted, and we don't make heavy decisions which impact or not impact anybody, but other people feel impacted by it. And so we don't come across these moments of adversity where we've got to try and challenge the status quo or challenge anybody that's trying to stand in our way. And so you just think, well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's just a given. So what's the big deal? Like, it's just simple. Like, just, they shouldn't be doing it. But then you realize that, well, it's not that simple, and it becomes this big, convoluted, complicated mess that requires so much firepower to be able to change it. So when you contacted me and you were telling me about all this stuff, I sat there and went, oh, wow, I kind of knew these things kind of existed in concept, but to know that it was happening to the extent that it was really sort of highlighted to me, well, oh, geez, what do I do from my side here? And so I think, I get a lot of guys that listen to this podcast, and we're often disconnected in a way. I mean, sometimes we are connected by, spouses, partners, family members, and we have that connection in that way. But sometimes I think we feel a little bit outside the circle. And I certainly from my end feel a little bit odd or uncomfortable when I talk about subjects like this, because ultimately it impacts women. And so I think, what right do I have to say either way? But it's incredibly important. And obviously, denying one person of one particular thing leads into a whole range of other scenarios and different types of decisions out in society, and it sort of opens the floodgates for other people to invade other people's privacy for other reasons as well. So it's not just about the topic at hand, but it could be a wider problem as well if it's not being dealt with properly.
Exactly. And I mean, I guess my feeling is that, I guess the issue that's at hand is that the group, which is called the Helpers of God's Precious Infants, or the hog pie, as we call them, because it's just shorter and less obnoxious. They say that they're exercising their right to protest peacefully. But, we feel that there are so many other places available for people to pray. There's that many churches in Albury. Doing so outside of that particular clinic is just an abuse of their religious privilege. And, I think, the police, their hands are tied, but at the same time, there's been very little action when there has been, confrontations. I mean, this group, they bring their kids and they hold up placards. They're handing out fetus dolls to people that are passing by in the street. There's people that, that live on that street that have to deal with harassment every day. There was one of the people that shared their story to Penny Sharp, said that, they live on that street and they were pushing a pram with their daughter, and, they told their child that their mother is going to murder a child.
Oh, I saw that.
And she's just taking her daughter to ballet. Like, she has nothing to do with it. But, the thing is, it affects the whole morale of the community, because, it's not just the people that are going to the clinic, it's the people that live on that street. It's the medical staff that work there that get harassed, and, it just creates unnecessary friction. And, in Victoria, there was actually a man that was killed by an anti-abortion protester And that's when they've actually got safe access zones in Victoria because of that. So, the group that I represent, we support the right to privacy because people seeking medical advice and family planning it should be a relationship that is confidential between the doctor and the patient. And you can't assume the circumstances or the reasons why somebody is attending the clinic. Some people are, in domestic violence situations. They might have an illness that they can't carry a child, or, it's just none of our business. So it's really inappropriate for, this group to feel like they can restrict the access of people, getting to that clinic.
Yeah, of course. And one thing that I probably should have mentioned or asked right at the beginning when we started talking was with this exclusion zone that's being pushed for. What does it actually mean, and what's it look like? What's an exclusion zone look like, and what would be the proposed requirements?
So the exclusion zone, if it was passed, would be able to. It would basically be the police being able to move people on who were found to be within, I think it's 150 meters of the clinic. So that means that they could no longer stand on the sidewalk. They couldn't, hold up signs. They couldn't, park their cars as they have been doing along the entire street. So people then didn't have the choice to not engage with these people.
Oh,
so they're taking up the whole street so that these people can't just go into the clinic. They're having to walk all the way down the street so that they can't avoid engaging with these people. So that's basically, if it would mean that the police could enforce these people and move them on from engaging with people that are accessing that street. So that includes patients and just pedestrian traffic. So you couldn't block that with your protest movement. They could pray or they could protest somewhere else, but it needs to be 150 meters away from that clinic.
Yeah, I have to give them credit for every Thursday to go to that level of dedication. I mean, it's pretty impressive. I mean, you sort of think, do these people have jobs or have they got other commitments that they need to do? Like a Thursday, and I'm assuming that they're there for the entire, hours of operation for the clinic on that particular Thursday. But it's just like, guys, like I'm sure there's like a million other things to do, but I guess when, we're talking about religious faith and ideology and certainly more extreme versions of it, then, those things are mere little hurdles to jump over, and this is nothing for them whatsoever to do. But it's incredible to what extent people will push their views on other people, and you've alluded to this already and mentioned it. It's and certainly read it in some of the articles that everyone should have the right to voice an opinion and protest and be able to say something of what they believe without fear of being attacked or persecution. Absolutely. But there's certainly some guidelines there about appropriate actions, and this is, certainly not appropriate. And I wasn't going to mention this because I listened to your other appearance in the that other podcast that I listened to. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Iron something.
The Iron Fist and the Velvet Glove.
There you go. Plug. I'll put a link to it because it was really good. But the guys rattled off these stories, and I wasn't going to do it, but you mentioned a couple of them, and I think, my audience is going to be completely different to their audience. So I'll just to paint a bit more of a picture from mine, because I've got it in front of me. So you mentioned the first story about the lady travelling to Wagga in a taxi, and also the mother and daughter who lived in the street and weren't actually going anywhere near the clinic or planning to go there, but were getting roped into it. There was another one where it says the clinic is forced to employ a security guard to ensure women have clear passage into the clinic. Even with security, women arrive inside shaking, crying and angry. Women are travelling to Melbourne at great cost to have an abortion because they cannot face the abuse they will endure if they go to their local clinic. Next story is staff being followed home, accosted in the street, forced to come to... Oh, hang on, let me do that in English. Staff Staff being followed home, accosted in the street, forced to come to work half an hour early to avoid the abuse. This happens every day. I'll get there in the end. And then I think that one just floored me. The fact that the staff are getting abused by these people is just insane, absolutely insane. The next one is a woman was taking... Oh, no, we talked about the ballet one. A woman sitting in a cafe in town is approached and told that there are photos of her going to the clinic, and then threats of legal action, intimidation of staff, death threats towards staff, constant calling of the police to accuse the staff of murdering children. It's just like this level of dedication that they have to just make people's lives so painful is just incredible. And I mean, there's so many different versions or denominations of faith and whatnot, so they've all got their little nuance of how they approach it all, and it's all sometimes it contradicts each other, but you'd think that on a scraping the surface with the way that these people live their life with their faith is that it's a faith of charity and forgiveness and care and love and understanding, and these actions, these examples just there they completely contradict what a lot of Christian faith is meant to be. So it's just this it's absolutely insane, and you sort of lose. It's almost like these people have lost the plot or what the core being of what their religious faith is all about.
That's right. And the funny thing is, sitting inside these council meetings, and they're all there and very well dressed, and you kind of look at these people and I couldn't help but think, if we weren't here for the reason that we're standing here today, I'm sure I would think these people would be great neighbors. But it is our fundamental beliefs which divide us. And I hesitate to say, I'd love to sit down with these people and just say, look, I'm not asking you to change your beliefs, but I'm asking you to respect other people's beliefs. So, but the cognitive, there's probably no point in sitting down with someone that has strong beliefs. It's like trying to convince an atheist that there's God, right? It's just, it doesn't matter which side of the scale that you're on. If you have somebody trying to convert you, it's just not going to happen. And for the same reason, I probably would be wasting my time if I was to sit down with these people and try and have a rational discussion. I mean, I'd really like to think that, I admire their devotion to what they believe is right. And that's why I believe that it needs to be done in a respectful way. I mean, I don't want to come onto your podcast or anyone else's and try and, make them into monsters. I think that they're people that, based upon what they believe is right, it's not my belief because, I'm very much not a religious person, but, that they're doing what they believe is right. And, that's what I'm doing. I'm no different to them in that way. I'm doing what I believe is right by trying to protect people's rights. So you have to respect them for that, but it's just that the way that they're going about it is in a really, really counterproductive way. They're not helping people. I've actually said to them on social media, some of the members, I said, why don't you help the people that have already got children that, are in really difficult social situations? Like they obviously are very organized and they're very, they're very focused on this area, but, it can be generated in such a more productive way. Why aren't they helping single mothers that are already in that position? They want to stop people from being able to, have terminations. Why don't they help people in third world countries? There's just, to my mind, there's just better ways of using your time if you feel like you want to do good, than limit people's, right to make their own choice.
Yeah, and I saw a comment, I don't know if it was on a picture or something on one of the pages on Facebook, and someone had said, wanting to do everything they possibly can to protect, a a child in inverted commas, but as soon as that child's born, then everybody walks away and leaves them, and they're neglected, and it's almost like this complete focus and weight there's no balance whatsoever. So
yeah, that's right.
And not that it validates the argument in any way, but I think if there was a demonstration of, we don't believe in this, and what we do in the circumstances where there's extreme circumstances of people having children for horrible reasons or whatever it might be, then these are the things that we put in place to be able to support those people going through those traumatic times, then you'd have a little bit more empathy for their situation and a little bit more understanding, even if you don't agree and you still think that their fundamental reasons for objecting this choice is still not sound. But if they were able to demonstrate a little bit more proactively to say, it's not just about being opposed to something. It's like, we hear all the demonstrations of trying to make society better for everybody. It's not just about following the rule of God or whatever it might be. It's just I mean, I live in a regional area, and I certainly look around, and the demographic changes, and not that it should stereotype as much, because you see it in metropolitan areas as well, but there's a lot of young families. There's a lot of single mothers. There's a lot of problems with drug and alcohol, and a lot of broken families, and the affordable housing that's around the place as well, and just the socio-economic of particular areas is drastically different to metropolitan areas, and with that comes a lot of challenges. And to be able to allow people to enforce opinions on people and not give them the choice to be able to not bring another child into the world that is probably not, that system's not able to actually look after them, you're just creating a never-ending problem, and it's just this never-ending cycle of I'll say it instead of you, but a never-ending cycle of shit. It's horrible, and how do you stop it? And not that abortions is the end result, but that's one thing in a larger scheme of another discussion, where it's just like, you need to be able to alleviate some of those problems, and especially when there's unwanted pregnancies from horrible and extreme circumstances such as rape, and why should somebody have to go through with a pregnancy which is off the back of an extreme,
traumatic,
absolutely the most traumatic of things to go through, and for somebody to turn around and say, "No, you're not allowed to," it's
very callous, isn't it? Like, I've brought that to the attention of this group. I said, "Well, are you so callous that you think that a 13-year-old girl who's suffered trauma should have to carry a child to term?" And nobody's answered the question for me, because the answer is probably yes. And if that's the case, then you've lost the moral high ground, in my opinion. It's such a contentious topic, I know, but
absolutely.
I mean, that to my mind is where you lose the argument, when you take, you're taking a child and you're taking away their right to have a happy, childhood. You're putting them through a really traumatic situation that they're not really prepared to go through. And, that's fundamentally why I think, when you're talking about that sort of situation, it shouldn't matter though. I mean, anyone who believes that they're not in the right and responsible situation to have a child should have the right to say, I'm not prepared for this. It's not a decision that anyone, I believe, would take lightly. And that's why we need to respect people's right to be able to do that, because if they've come to that decision, it's probably hard enough to be in that situation to begin with, and then to come to that decision, I mean, did you ever, there's a program called Freakonomics, and they did a special on abortion and crime, and they had a really interesting, I think they said all of the decline in crime in 1985 to 1999 experienced by high abortion states relative to low abortion states is concentrated among, basically from the people born before abortion legalization. There is no difference in the crime patterns for high abortion to low abortion states. But so I'm not doing, sorry, I probably stuffed that up, but basically, in this Freakonomics, you might want to scratch that little I was reading ad lib from a thing, but it wasn't actually saying what I was trying to say. But
I'm assuming what it means is, and you can correct me if I'm on the right track, or I get your gib, is the states that have introduced abortion options have seen a decrease in crime within those periods of time. So versus states that still have it as an illegal practice and it's not available for people, you're having a lot more unwanted pregnancies off the back of broken relationships, broken homes, domestic violence, crime, drugs and alcohol and all sorts of stuff. And so you've got a lot more children coming out of those scenarios that are being sort of put back into those similar situations of crime, which is then leading to the statistics. So whereas people are giving the option to be able to make a decision to not bring another child into an abusive or traumatic environment, is seeing a reduction in crime over a period of time as that law sits there and people continue to use it over the years.
That's right.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And it makes sense. I mean, and I guess a lot of people, because it's such a touchy subject for a lot of people to talk about, it's hard to sit there and sort of look at the facts when you're talking about fundamentally about this choice, and it boils down to this choice. And I'm sure like Freakonomics is a US based thing, so looking at US states, and the US is a big sort of religious country as far as their faith and their different denominations depending on where you are in the country, and there's a lot of extreme versions of Christian faith in the US as well, and we have it here in Australia in smaller pockets, but ultimately when it comes down to it, and you're a casual person, depending on how you word the argument and you talk about choice, it's a lot softer. But when you talk about aborting or terminating, and it's such an extreme word, even though it's realistically what it is, then you get slightly different answers from people, and it becomes uncomfortable because people aren't used to talking about those things. They're not dinner table or party topics to talk about, and they can divide people. So people tend to steer away from a lot of data and a lot of discussion around it, it's concerning, because that's why we have these situations that we have now where, every Thursday we've got this group of people that cause so much anguish and problems that it's just been left to sit there and fester for so many years. And I'm sure it happens in other parts of the country as well. And while some other states may have exclusion zones in place, and that's helped, no doubt you'll still have to come across some form of friction no matter where you are in the country, just because of these pockets of people that have got their opinions.
That's right, and I think I sincerely believe that people have the right to their opinions, whatever that may be. But the whole issue of safe access zones limiting free speech, they're basically, all we're asking for is that the people can express their views, whatever they may be, but that they're not impeding on anyone's right to individual liberty. So the safe access zones are designed to protect the privacy and the dignity of the patients accessing the reproductive services. The harassing and intimidating of the patients as they attempt to access the medical procedure should be prohibited. And under the Safe Access Bill, people will be able to continue to express their views on abortion, but they will have to do it in other places. So, like in a recent poll by Langley Research, found that 81% of New South Wales residents supported exclusion zones around the clinics and services provided. So Victoria and Tasmania and the ACT are the three states that have legislated for safe access zones. So New South Wales, it just, to me, it's just silly because, I feel like it's a pretty progressive place, but we're still way behind in terms of implementing realistic, laws like being able to access medical services without being accosted by people whose religious ideologies they feel they have the right to inflict on you.
Still stuck in the past. I mean, and there's so many laws that have just been neglected and not been discussed for so many years. And then when they finally come to the surface, then there's this big question that gets discussed around a lot of people saying, how the hell is this still a thing? Like, this is, you could probably understand if it was decades ago, and even then it's scary that it even existed in the first place. But to have a law that still is valid and can be, can be exercised is so just, it's really concerning. But I guess, as you said earlier, if it's not discussed and it's not being highlighted, then it gets forgotten. And when it's forgotten, it doesn't go away. It's just that it still exists.
It gets repressed.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. One thing that I was going to mention, I think I'll probably just more make a statement rather than having you comment on it, because I'm keeping in mind your position and what you're trying to do from your end. But I had a look on some of the Facebook pages, and I was looking at I think there's one Facebook page that's sort of dedicated to the rights of privacy in Albury, and one of the tactics that they're taking is they're taking photos of the protesters and putting them online in a bit of a response to what they're doing to the people that are attending the clinic. So sort of like, this is what...
Making them culpable.
Absolutely. And I could be on the fence, because I get it. And I think that sometimes that's the only way that people can understand what people have to go through if they get a little bit of that measure. But then on the other side of it, I sort of think, is that adding fuel to the fire? But I looked at some of these pictures, and I will make all the stereotypes here, so you don't have to worry about saying it, and I'll leave it to you. But, a lot of them are elderly people, so there's a generational thing here. I was extremely surprised at the amount of males. I have no idea why any male feels that they have the right to talk about what a woman chooses to do with her body. I think it's the most disgusting thing for any guy to... I feel guilty even talking about the topic, even in a pro sense, to give women the right to do it. And I only feel that way because I have a wife, I've got, family and I've got friends that are female, and, at times there might be circumstances where people are impacted by this. And so I feel that there's a bit of a duty for me to at least give a platform for people to talk about it, and then also to support those decisions. But I still feel a bit weird as a guy to sort of weigh in on a topic that's about women. But to see guys that are just fundamentally opposed to a woman's decision about their own body is just...
It's frightening.
Oh, it's I can't think of enough descriptive words to
I know it's...
it.
Yeah, it's really frightening to me. And I mean, look, I think that it's not any woman's right either. Like if there's one of those women that was out there protesting, she has as much right as any man.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's really no different if it's a male or a female. Like the point of anyone having any...
It's the individual.
Yeah, it's the right of the individual.
Yeah, no, and
that's why. Point. But I commend you though for it's an uncomfortable topic, but it's one that we should talk about, and that's the whole point where. Why I think that it's good for people to normalize it. I mean, it's not a comfortable topic, but unless we sit down and we actually talk about it, nothing's going to change. And, I think, if you have sisters, you have, girlfriends or wives or mothers, as a male who supports that, it's really important to show your support. And as a woman and as an advocate of this, it's something that's really needed too. Obviously I agree with you when you say, it's a woman's choice, but, we also, I think, like you said, it's an uncomfortable topic for a lot of men who feel, it's a woman's choice. And, I think that's right, but you shouldn't be afraid to stand beside us and, say, well, we support you, and that's what I'm here to do. I kind of I want people to feel like they can talk about it and not be uncomfortable about it, because that's the only way we can normalize it and get people to stand together and be like, okay, we need to get this across the board, and we need to make it something that's okay. Because at the moment, I feel like it's because nobody wants to talk about it that nothing's being done. And that's the danger, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, just to highlight it, and I think you made a great point, and I didn't really look at it this way, although it's plain as day, is that, yes, okay, this is about a woman making a choice, but it's about the individual rather than it just being a gender-based thing. It's about the individual person and their circumstances and them having the freedom to be able to make that decision. And then on the back of that, looking, and I think you were you're very diplomatic when I listened to you on the other podcast, because you made a statement along the lines of, I'm not going to name individuals because that's just not the right thing to do. But I did my little poking around and I saw the people sort of in the local government and council and people that are causing a lot of problems here. And, the fact that, there are males that are in public positions of power that have influence and have a platform to be able to air their views to more than just their inner circle of friends. I think there's even more validation for men to be able to turn around and say that's not right, and support the individuals, not only women, but the individuals to be able to make those decisions themselves. And I just think that, it puts another shade on it and another perspective, which I certainly haven't thought about. And I've always, as you mentioned before, I've had that feeling of, that's, I don't know whether I should really make any comment of that. I'm a guy, what place do I have to say that? And you sort of leave it go. But when these things are happening, I think we're just as responsible as everybody else to be able to support.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I guess the other problem that, in this particular instance, there has been people in this group that have tried to, they've got a lot of influence in the community, so they're using that influence to intimidate people, and they're also they've got a lot of financial support behind them, so they've been flexing their muscle legally to say we're going to sue anyone who says something that we don't like or that we consider to be defamation. And not everyone is in a position to go to court over something petty. We all have jobs to do, and it takes up a lot of time in our day, and not everyone can afford to go and get a lawyer to defend themselves over some claim that they're going to make. But it seems like all these people have is time and, money at their expense to sort of prove their point. And I think they're just being bullies, to be honest. I'm not going to point anyone out, and I'm being very careful not to use defamatory language, but, that's kind of what the issue is. That, this whole thing has been silenced for so many years. And, there is a lot of people that are involved in the, in the group that I've been involved in, that are very frustrated, and they're tired of talking about it. Even Dr. Amanda Kahn, who's, been spending the last couple of years that she's been working as a counsellor in Albury trying to get this exclusion zone through, they're all tired of talking about it, because we all know that it's something that should be a fundamental right. But, the crazy thing is that, there's still more people that don't want it than do. And they've got the strength and the financial backing behind them, which is why, being able to engage with people like you is so important and so greatly appreciated, because, you've got that audience that, can make a difference. And, that's what we're trying to do now, is we're just trying to make sure that people outside of, the immediate place know that it's, an issue, and they can sort of, their voices count.
And I don't want to jinx you at all, but have you felt any of this intimidation or targeting by these groups at all? Being the spokesperson for this cause, you're going to, or if you haven't already, had a bit of attention your way as being this person that's sort of representing this change. Have you copped anything yourself?
Not yet. I wouldn't say, but having said that, I'm a fairly new addition to this committee on this group. So I know that the people that have been advocating tirelessly, who have started the Right for Privacy group that I'm a part of, I should say the Exclusion Zone group, they have personally had a lot of intimidation and legal threats. They've had the police called on them. They've had slander. And I probably, it's probably not my place to go into personal, they'd be better off to tell the story than I would. But I mean, I do know that they've had a lot of run-ins with this group, and you know, it's been a very frustrating sort of saga for them to have to go through. And you know, I guess what I'm trying to do is to be respectful, and like I said to you earlier, I respect them, at least in the very least, that they are doing what they believe is right, and I think that I respect them for that. It's just that we have different views, and you know, I think that you just have to, like, for me, I'm just trying to maintain the moral high ground, and you know, I'm not going to resort to name calling. I'm there because I represent something that's bigger than me. I represent. I'm trying to represent the people who, you know, that want to have a medical service when they need it. And I want them to be able to access that without being harassed or having anyone's religious belief impede their ability to have that medical service, or, you know, to feel like they have to make a decision that's not right for them for any reason.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes and we do it because sometimes it's human instinct. We always, you know, react to situations. But I think if we stoop to the level of others, then we become a distraction from the bigger topic anyway, and it leaves you open for more, harder steps to walk through, or more criticism if you're not acting in an appropriate way. So I think it's a very smart approach, and to take the moral high ground and try and find, I guess, you know, not so much that it's compromise. Well, I guess it is compromise in a way, because you're still, as you said, you're respecting people's rights to be able to voice an opinion, but it's finding common ground to do it in an appropriate way so that both parties can go about their days as need be, and not impeding on each other. But did you feel that, like, I mean, just given all the stories and you know, seeing the experiences of people that, you know, that are in sort of the groups that you're in now, did you feel the hesitation in it any way, or was it more of a case that you knew that you had to take that sort of moral high ground, that would be a way to sort of, for you to battle through some of those initial fears of diving into a role like this? Because it's, I mean, I give you credit. I don't know if I would have the guts to do something like this, because you're definitely potentially in the firing line for a lot from other people that feel so passionately about something that's the complete opposite of what you're pushing.
Well, we definitely have been baited. You know, you have people come up to you and they ask very provocative questions, and you have to, you know, it's good when you have a group of people together. There's always going to be some people that are, you know, especially when they've been personally affected by it, it's really important to hold their hand and go, just don't engage. Just, you know, you gotta think beyond that comment, because, you know, when the cameras go on, they always have someone come up and say, well, you know what, so do you really think, you know, that, so you believe that killing babies is okay? Is that, you know, or, you know, they try and make you respond to something that's, you know, really, that they troll you basically. And you just have to learn not to engage with that sort of nonsense. It's, I've been lucky. I've had lots of great support, and, you know, a lot of people in the group that are, you know, they have a fairly good radar for that sort of thing, and you just kind of go, okay, here it comes, and you hold your breath and you just take, you know, count to 10 and you say, yep, no thanks, and you kind of, you know, you just keep going, because you've got to remember that, you know, there's always going to be a camera, and there's always going to be someone who's waiting to vilify you in some way, to, you know, to take what you say out of context. And so for that reason, it's really important to, yeah, like I said, try and maintain the moral high ground, no matter how frustrating and infuriating as it is. But, you know, when you're at home, you can sort of, you can turn on your heavy metal music and go, oh, no, I need to let off some steam.
I guess, I mean, the good thing about this is that, I mean, you clearly have you know, you've got self-awareness to be able to understand what's happening in that situation and what the right things to do are. And that's probably something that is lacking on the other side of the fence, where, you know, a lot of people are in, and this is something I crap on about all the time in this podcast, about things such as mindfulness and having awareness and being present in the moment, and understanding your actions, and also understanding what you have control over and what you don't have control over, and focusing on, you know, what you have control over in that particular period of time. And I mean, just from the things that you're saying as far as the way you handle yourself is, I mean, to me, it just sounds like you've got something that a lot of these other people probably are a little bit challenged with.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that they're very proud, and they've I think that they've got the confidence is what they've always had, because they have the strength in numbers, and you know, now they're kind of having that challenged a little bit more now that, you know, you've got a few of the council members. They're definitely outnumbered, but their voices are being heard, and, you know, the traction is starting to gain for people that are, you know, the minority, which is our group. And, you know, people like yourself certainly help to bring awareness by giving a voice to this issue, and as well as, you know, other people that have, you know, journalists and you know, other podcasters that have, you know, interviewed people or that have brought to attention to the public this topic. So yeah, I mean, it's you know, I think that they've enjoyed the privilege of being the you know, that being able to be confident in their beliefs and sort of exercise their privilege for long enough. But I think they're probably, you're probably likely to see a little bit of a change in their behaviour when they're no longer the dominant voice.
Well, I think that's what it's all about at the moment, as far as, you know, voice, because I think there's certainly not a minority when it comes to an opinion on the topic itself, and I think that the majority is actually in support of you know, these things such as exclusion zones and giving people, the individuals, the right to make those types of decisions. It's just about the voice, and that's where it's lacking. So, you know, it's a little bit different for me, but why not? I think I sort of thought about the people that listen to this podcast, and, you know, most people are from Australia, but there's a lot of people overseas as well, and they'll have their own challenges in their own neck of the woods. And I think if I can even just plant the seeds of something that you know, begins to pop up in conversation a little bit more, so there's more people actually talking about it, and that's the big thing. It's all about voice. Then hopefully it makes a difference. But I'm going to chuck a whole bunch of links on the website from all the articles and everything you sent me. I've been reading this all morning, going through and getting immersed in it all. I might also ask you to give me, because I'm an idiot when it comes to this stuff. I mean, I've never contacted a local MP ever. And I've been like you in the past, not terribly politically inclined, not because I don't care, but it's just, you know, well, you just don't think about it.
Apathy.
Yeah, I think that's a good word. Yeah, absolutely. But maybe we can talk after this and work out some step-by-steps, and then I'll put it all in the show notes so that we make it as easy as possible for people to understand who the people are, and then what's the best way of contacting them, and how they should contact them as well. Because I think some people struggle with written communication as well, and I think if we can empower people to be able to do it effectively and do it as easily possible, absolutely. And I think that's a big thing. We get distracted very easily with our phones and laptops and everything. So, you know, we need to make it as simple as possible for people to be able to make big change. So we'll get something together and chuck it in the show notes. But is there anything else? I mean, for people, obviously contacting MPs is important. You've given me a link to what is it?
Open letter. Penny shops.
A petition. Yep. So there's that one. I found another one as well, which is more or less pushing for similar things, which I'll just check with you before I post that up. And but is there anything else that people should keep in mind, or anything that people should be doing apart from all of these instructions that I'm going to be giving everyone?
Well, I think that. Well, we've got a Facebook page if people are interested to have a look and see what's happening. We need exclusion zones right here, right now. So you can follow us on the page, and we'll give updates on how the progress is going on that. As you said before, penny sharps open letter to safe access zones.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a petition. It literally, it would take less than 30 seconds to sign and put your name on it.
Yep.
And that would be a great help. I actually spoke to Penny at the rally, and I said, look, what can I tell people? Because I'm going to be doing interviews. And she just said to me, sign the petition. Also, just contact your MP. 10 minutes on the phone, or if you're not a phone, if you're more of an introvert and you don't like to be on the phone like me, then send them an email. Just a quick email. Just say, hey, look, it probably would be good to disclose, the safe access zones. Penny Sharp is bringing it to Parliament this year, New South Wales Parliament. So actually on the petition page, there's a letter, which you could probably copy and paste or, sort of modify as you see fit. And that they're usually pretty good. Like I said, I've contacted a few local members in my involvement with this advocacy, and I was really surprised to find that they do actually reply to emails in a very timely manner. I don't know if every MP is going to be the same, but it's definitely, something that, give yourself half an hour. Honestly, you won't need more than half an hour, but it makes a huge difference, and your voice is so important, and it feels really good. Let me say, as someone who's had a very, very recent introduction into, the political sort of areas, it's empowering. You get to meet, you get to engage with people who are, maybe not in the same sort of areas as you, that, over something that's important, and your voice really does make a difference. So, it'd be great to see if this does pass, that, to think that you've had a contribution to that, if it does go. But, as I said, it's not looking terribly positive at the moment, which is the reason why I absolutely plead for people. If you think that there should be an exclusion zone in New South Wales, we need your voice, and we need people to email, we need people to call, because, the majority of the New South Wales members are quite conservative, and unless we get people to call in and say, look, this is something that's important, there's a pretty good chance that it won't pass. So make your voices heard, and, do whatever you can. You can look on my page, but also, contacting your MP is probably the best thing that you could do.
Yeah.
If you're in New South Wales.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'll chuck all the links in there. I'm going to make it really easy. I'll spell out a few things for people, because I just know what I'm like sometimes with things. I'm like, oh God, that sounds like there's so many things that I need to do, but I'll make it nice and easy for people and chuck some links on my Facebook page as well. And yeah, I'll just do what I can from my side to support. And as you said, like, even if it at the moment it doesn't look too good, then that's even more reason for people to take a few minutes to shoot an email off or make a phone call or sign a petition. I think it'll be nice and simple from our end, and combined it'll have a big impact. So we'll do what we can.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support, and thanks to all your listeners that, take it upon themselves to spend that 5 or 10 minutes to to exercise their political muscle and do that. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah, no, I'm liking where this podcast is going. I'm like, oh wow, this sounds like something I could actually do something positive for people. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think
feels good.
Yeah, that's right. And I think next time we might have to have a secondary chat. We'll talk heavy metal and maybe some of the years gone by of being in the Sydney metal scene and what you've been doing since then.
That would be great. I would love to do that.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, Caitlin. I'm going to put links up, and really appreciate you giving me some time and letting me ask a bunch of silly questions.
Oh, Andy, it's a privilege, and it's been so nice to chat with you. Thank you so much for giving me a platform to speak on.
Awesome. Cheers. Thank you. Thanks, folks. If you really are a strong supporter of what Caitlin is all about, the biggest takeaway from this is contacting your local MP if you live in New South Wales. If you don't, I think regardless, you should be contacting your local Parliament representative and letting them know that this topic is an important one, and making sure that we push for people's right to choose. I'm going to put links everywhere. Everywhere. They're going to be in the show notes for andysocial.net. So all the stuff that we spoke about, there's going to be all the Facebook pages, the groups, the community groups, all the content. There's a bunch of news articles. Larry chirping in the background, my cockatiel. Thank you. As well as resources as to how to find out who your local MP is in the state of New South Wales. If you want more information, please contact me directly, or you can contact Caitlin. I'll have Caitlin's details in there as well. But anything you can do to ensure that your local Parliament representative is aware that this is a hot topic, would go a long way. I think, as I mentioned in this chat with Caitlin, for me, I just figured it was a given. Like, I really just thought, of course, people should have safe access. They should have the right to make that decision themselves, and it should be legal. I just figured it was. But because I figured it was a given, I don't talk about it. And as a result, I've discovered that it actually isn't that easy and that straightforward. And a lot of people have to go through a hell of a lot in order to utilize these services, which is really, really unfortunate. So, please, if you can spare a couple of minutes to get on the phone and call your local MP, or shoot an email, send a letter, whatever it might be, it will go a hell of a long way. And I'd love to see the antisocial audience get behind Caitlin's cause, because I think we really need to support people that are already going through a traumatic episode themselves, and they don't need the further hurdles to jump over before utilising these services. So antisocial.net, go over there, check it all out. Everything will be there. Please contact me directly or Caitlin directly if you want more information and assistance as well. That's it, guys. I'm more than enough crapping on from me. As always, if you want to support the podcast, all the social media stuff, liking, sharing, tagging, all that sort of stuff, leave a review somewhere, all that love. If you want to get into the competition with Design by Jaden, go to designbyjaden.com. If you want free artwork, all that sort of stuff, go back and listen to the beginning of the episode if you want to. But that's it. Thank you so much. Love you guys so much. Thank you so much for the support. Until next week's episode,